great to be with you. Great to be with both of you. I want to just get into it and ask you both to start by briefly describing what it is you do in your company and where you operate. Bernd, why don't we start with you?
Yes. So the vision of GROPYUS is to create affordable and sustainable living for everyone. In that sense, we have a product which is a multi-family building, which is energy positive, which is sustainable, and which is affordable. And instead of creating buildings as one-off projects, as the industry typically does, we see buildings as evolving products. We capture the whole value chain end-to-end from the first assessment of the site, including an AI-based configurator that replaces the architect, robotics manufacturing, and then also run the software platform which operates the building. We are a company that is 4 years old. We've grown to 400 people, raised 250 million euros in investors' capital, are active in Central Europe, and are actively evaluating North America as a potential next market.
All right. Marek?
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. Naviparking actually started with a very simple idea to help drivers to find a parking spot and also help owners of the parking to monetize the parking. But over the years, it evolved into something what we call parking as a service. So the platform which actually makes parking easy, accessible for the consumers, but also for businesses, and recently also for the owners of the platforms which are busy in mobility and payment space. So you can envision that on the bottom line, we have like infrastructure. In the middle, there is our platform, and on top, there are applications which are all our applications or third-party applications or the platforms we integrate with. We are present in Poland, Dubai, Bahrain, and we plan also to expand in MENA countries and also US.
Okay. When we talk about sustainability in business, we're usually talking about water use, energy use, the materials used, supply chains. What I think is interesting about both of your businesses is like sustainability is really tied to an improved customer-first experience. So I want to ask you both to kind of talk about how the consumer is at the center. Marek, why don't we start with you at Naviparking?
Yes, it's a very good question. So we try to provide the consumer seamless parking experience. Actually, we have a quote that your experience starts with parking. So if you go, for example, to a shopping mall and you cannot park, then of course your experience is impacted, and maybe you will not buy anything. I know also that some women, for example, colleagues of mine in Dubai, they don't go to Dubai Mall because they are afraid of parking there. So the seamless experience actually allows you to avoid traffic jams. There is a report of IBM that claiming that around 30% of all the traffic congestion in the cities is caused by people looking for the parking. But you can imagine further the impact, regarding the sustainability linked to customer experience is in a context of mobility, how to get from A to B. We promote multimodal transportation, actually through park and ride, concept. We promote parking at one of our parkings and then continue the journey by public transportation.
So the park and ride, somebody can go to a metro somewhere, yes, and the app helps facilitate that.
Correct,
okay.
Correct. And also through digitalization, what we achieve is a creation of the so-called e-mobility hubs. So customer actually can also take advantage of micro-mobility, like e-scooter, which can be available at the parking. So we try to create an ecosystem around the parking through digitalization and exposure of our parking services. So for example, if you are providing a super app to your customers and you have like millions of customers, we have such a case in Poland with AutoPay. They started as a provider of payment services for motorways. These customers, they are exposed to our parking services through their app. And actually, the parking experience is like motorway experience for them from payment perspective. So they don't need our app. They don't need to know anything about our parking. The only thing what they need to know is how to navigate to the parking. The rest happens behind the scenes, and they are customer of AutoPay. So in this way, actually, we can scale very fast and reach millions of customers through integration with existing platforms.
Okay. All right. And Bern, how about you and the things that you're building for the people who are going to live in these places? How are they at the center of what you do?
So the starting point when we started the company, we were driven by two aspects. So one was that buildings account for around 40% of the global carbon footprint. And the other one is that there is simply not enough affordable living space out there. So there's a shortage of affordable homes. So when you are a product company and you have an evolving product, what you do? Yeah, you go out and talk to people and you find out what your customers really want. So we interviewed thousands of people, we went to their homes, we spent days with them, yeah, and tried to find out what really are the challenges in living in any sort of residential unit. And it turned out, for example, that the number one reasons for people to change the place where they live is noise. So when they can hear their neighbors too much, or when even within their own unit, they can hear noise from one room to the next. And that actually went into the product definition. So what we did there is we basically, based on all the learnings from customers, we wrote a product brief and then thought about, now what would be the best way to actually get these products to people? So it was not starting with, okay, this is how construction works and this is what we can do better. It was really starting with the product. And for us, considering people as the center does not just look at the majority of the people. So it was, inclusion was very important for us. Yeah, we wanted to cater for people with all sorts of needs because we believe it's just too short to say, okay, yeah, we can capture 80% of the market, that's good enough. Well, it's not. You know, if you want to make a real difference, you need to look at getting as close as possible to 100% of the people. And the people are not just playing a role in the initial product definition. It's also, you know, when we run the software platform that operates the buildings, we learn about people's behaviors. We learn about their needs. We learn about what makes their life easier. So we can adopt the software part of the product continuously, and we can also iterate the product itself. So there's a constant learning from feedback that we get from our customers. Well, and needless to say, and I think that's one of the important points also to point out, if you want to build a people-centric organization, keeping your customer in focus, that also needs to be something that you do internally. So also putting people first in our culture, in our value sets, in our processes, which is really enabling only the rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we were talking before, you talked about how it helps people in the buildings that you build to track like their energy use, right? So they know how much they're using, and then they can make informed decisions like, oh, I'm always leaving that bathroom light on, right?
Yes.
I mean, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's important to keep the customer still decide, right? So they can say, I want to turn the motion sensor on that switches my light on and off in the bathroom, or I can do it by myself. But I understand the consequences because the app gives me the feedback on how that actually works. But it's not that tech would overrule people. Yeah, it should be support. It should be something that adds value.
Okay, I want to follow up with you and you know go and ask about the materials. I said at the beginning, you know, usually when we talk about sustainability, the materials are part of it. So I want to have you talk a little bit about the materials of what you're using to build.
So from a product perspective, our main construction material is timber, and it's from sustainable forestry, and it's as much local as it can be. The interesting part is when you do buildings as products, you can spend much more time on and resources and money on developing the best possible product, because you're not just using it for one building, for one project, you're using it over and over again. So we use sustainable materials wherever we can, but we also plan what we call in a design for disassembly, what would happen with the materials in a building at the end of the lifetime of the building. And it's also around using or secondary uses of materials. For example, use waste paper as insulation material, because when you use reused components in the first place, you have an immediate impact on sustainability. And then secondly, once you've defined this most sustainable product that you have, just simply by running it through a factory, which is AI-driven, which is optimized on yield, you are increasing your utilization of materials. So there's almost no waste, which is very contrary to typical construction, where you have between 15 and 30% material, which actually leaves the construction site again in bins. So that's simply not happening. And the third one is sustainability, and from a people centricity specifically, material choice also depends on creating an atmosphere for people where they can feel comfortable. So what materials regulate climate in a building? Yeah, so where do you regulate moisture content, for example, to make it healthy for people? How can you take emissions of materials out as much as possible to again create a healthy environment? So it's very much in connection with sustainability for nature, but also with people who use the product.
Okay, all right. Mark, I want to come back to you. I mean, we know that idling cars is a huge contributor to climate change. I come from the United States, a real car culture. I can completely imagine what you said about the people driving around in the Dubai Mall and trying to find a place to park. And I think the U.S. Department of Energy says like 3 billion gallons, more or less, are wasted each year, just in the U.S. of cars idling. So that's a huge efficiency in what Naviparking is doing. But it seems to me there are other things that are also ways that help with sustainability in terms of this model. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, actually, through our technology of digitalization of parking spaces, we can make parking usage more efficient. That's one aspect of what we are doing. But also, our work is also focusing on unlocking potential of existing parking spaces which are not used at all in a context of smart city. For sure, you know about business towers, for example, with offices, which are only accessible by employees, and then after business hours, they are empty. Because the access to these towers, to the parking, is only based on, for example, having a card. So you have a card and you can get access to the tower. With our technology, we have digital access, solution, and we can make these parking spaces available to all, drivers in the city. So in this way, parking spaces through digitalization are becoming a part of the smart city ecosystem. And that contributes also to another way of planning smart city, because when a master planner knows that you can have parkings which are digitalized, which are shared among different, different consumers, different customers, businesses, consumers, then they can plan less parking spaces than usual, and these spaces can be devoted to parks and or other, places where, people can have a rest and enjoy life. So that's the one aspect. But there also there is another dimension of having digital parkings is that, as I mentioned, we create these e-mobility hubs, and we are focusing on value-added services. So you can, for example, make your last mile logistics more efficient. Logistics accounts for the 30% of all the costs in logistics is about last mile costs. You can imagine that some of the goods you can deliver to the parking, and when you finish your work, you can pick up the goods and you take the goods home. So you don't need to deliver them to your home. So that has for sure a potential to reduce the traffic, reduce the fuel, and reduce the CO2 emission. You can envision, for example, algorithms which advise how to get from A to B using AI, and when you have access to the parking data, you can dynamically, real-time, advise the best, route, how to get from A to B, taking into consideration traffic jams, the weather, accessibility, and also maybe preferences of the driver. Because if the driver in a profile has a green preference, you can maybe support him to give him, advice to travel a little bit longer, but more sustainable. Park and then maybe use, public transportation. So there are unlimited actually use cases which you can imagine. So I believe that the fact that we expose via APIs to third parties the parking services, it will spark for sure lots of innovation, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. I think at this point, people listening, hearing both of your visions may say to themselves, I'm convinced, right? Like this is a better way to build. It's cheaper, more efficient, it's sustainable. I don't want to be sitting, idling around and parking. But of course, that doesn't mean that widespread adoption is easy. And so let me ask each of you, like maybe what the biggest challenge is to scaling up what it is that you're doing. Bern, why don't we start with you?
Well, what we do is a tech company, but it's at the same time asset heavy, and it's in a slow industry, which is real estate. So we do need significant funds. Having a product-driven tech company in real estate, requiring own manufacturing and all that, that's a business model that's really hard to explain to investors. So very many VCs simply say that doesn't match our financing horizons. So our financing structure is a bit different, so it's mainly focused on family offices because they understand real estate and they have a longer-term time horizons. But besides the financing, I would say the biggest challenges in the external environment really is regulatory nature, in respect to building codes being very local. Just imagine you buy a car in Doha, but you cannot leave Doha city limits in this car because you're only allowed to drive it within Doha city limits. Next town, next city, next country, next state, they will also have different building codes. Yeah? Neglecting the fact that physics is the same everywhere. Yeah, for example, if you look at char rates of timber, so the speed how timber burns, which is important for fire safety and structural engineering of buildings. Every country defines this differently. Yeah? Same material, same everything, but everybody believes they can, know it a little bit better than everybody else. So having the ambition to create a global product that can be used everywhere, but being limited by a very, very local nature of building codes and understanding buildings, that is clearly the biggest issue when it comes to global scaling.
Okay. Mark, why doesn't everybody just download the app, Maybe they will.
It's not that simple, actually. Actually, the scaling of our solution is a challenge. So we address it in that way that we partner with the prime, leading parking management systems companies, which are present globally, and that gives us a scale opportunity. Some of them are deployed like in 30,000 locations globally, and we are integrated with them. What does it mean? That we can provide on an app, visibility of the parking, mobile payments, reservation, but not only we can expose this to third parties, as I said, and we can also provide these services to, companies. It could be Uber, for example, or, any company which could take advantage of the parking services and add this as a value-added service. So that's like on the demand side, and but as Bernd also mentioned, this is also capital intense. You need money. You need partners to work together with. We work with a number of property developers companies. We have good partnership with them. We plan to have more. We hope to have more. And through deployment of our solutions, we hope to standardize actually the whole parking space, because the biggest challenge to scale is lack of standardization. Actually, the parking domain is very similar to telecommunication domain in beginning of 2000. I was busy at that time as the chief architect at Liberty Global, and my role was to ensure that the complexity of the network infrastructure, we could hide and expose, make it completely transparent to the business services. The same we try to achieve in a space of parking. So the future belongs to, I believe, to ecosystem of partners, not only in technology space, but also partners which understand the need to have standardization in parking domain, because the opportunity is huge. This is a multi-billion-dollar market, with a huge positive impact possibility on the environment and well-being of people.
Yeah, yeah. And in both cases, I think for people, it's attractive because the experience is better, right? And that, you're not driving around looking for a spot. You're living in a place that is more comfortable, that's more kind of adapted to your needs as a human than a lot of like the kind of standard buildings that are made, I think.
Absolutely. And actually, our strategy is not to promote our own app, to partner with existing, platforms which have millions of already customers and give them opportunity to use payment even, services of that super app and have also parking, services coming from our platform. And our platform may be in future from other platforms, because if we standardize this domain, there will be for sure other players. We will do the same.
Okay. Yeah. We don't have much time left, so I want to sum up by asking each of you for one piece of advice that you'd give to people out there listening who may be interested in getting in either of the spaces that you work in, or just in general in a business that has sustainability at the forefront. Bern, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that Marek was also mentioning now. My advice would be just don't try it on your own. Get a good group of people around you that you do it together with. Find good partners. Be willing to share. Be willing to also share interest in your company with your key associates in your company. Get good mentors. We are moving into a culture which is more focused on sharing and on collaboration than it was, a few decades ago, where it was all about mine. Yeah, and if you want to succeed, it's about being more of an open system. No matter whether it's a niche industry or a niche product that you are developing a solution for, or whether it is a disruption of an industry, it doesn't matter. It's about taking people along.
All right, Mark?
My advice would be patient, don't give up. If you believe in your product and your services and added value you can provide to businesses and society, continue. And of course, try to convince partners to work with you, especially big players on the market. If you manage to do it, your future is bright. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you, Ben. This has been a fun conversation. Marek Stawiński from Naviparking and Bern Oswald from GROPYUS. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.